Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Metabolism, where we discuss everything that impacts your hormones and metabolism so that you can take control, repair the damage, and lose weight consistently without making yourself miserable in the process. It's my mission to empower you so that you and your metabolism thrives and you never have to go through diet misery again. I'm Louise Digby, registered nutritional therapist, weight loss expert, and founder of the Nourish Method to lasting fat loss. Today, we have got a very special guest on the podcast, Lara Seago, registered nutritional therapist and one of our success coaches in the Nourish Method. We're going to get straight into it. Okay, so we have got Lara Seago on the podcast today. And I've really been wanting to get Lara onto the podcast because she's just so knowledgeable about everything to do with women's health and hormones. And she works really closely with our clients. So I feel like there's lots of pearls of wisdom in there that we can share with our listeners. And Lara also has kind of an advantage on me, if you like, because you have personal experience of working with, exactly kind of the problems that our clients have, going into that hormonal transition and, having to start to think about weight management a little bit more as you go through that transition. Yes. So that is why I wanted to get you on, really, is to really dig into that personal experience. So perhaps you could start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you came into nutrition and how you came to specialize in women's health.
Okay, so my background in sort of getting into nutrition sort of evolved over time, but I soon became really interested in hormones, mainly because of my own personal experience. So when I was younger, I really suffered with, I'm pretty sure I had PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So it's a really severe form of PMS. And I had it for years, and I don't think I really realized when I was younger. I did used to feel like I was kind of going a bit mad the second half of my cycle every month. And I always felt kind of really much more emotional, much more stressed, much more angry at times. I was either angry or was crying, one or the other. And it was quite extreme. And I had quite a lot of physical symptoms as well, sort of, quite significant physical PMSy type symptoms, sort of really sore, painful breasts, bloating, all that kind of stuff. And for a long time, I don't think I really understood what was going on when I was really young. And then as I kind of got older, I started to realize that I perhaps suffered a lot more than other people. And then when I started training in nutrition and learning about the kinds of changes you can make to support hormone balance, I became more interested in it, and I started making changes to my own diet, of course, and miraculously my symptoms all disappeared. So I'm really passionate about, it started off with a real interest in PMDD, actually, because a lot of women who suffer with any kind of hormone issue, the sort of mainstream view, and I'm not knocking that, sometimes it's needed as well, or instead of, or whatever, and everybody's entitled to their choice, but it's quite limited. It's hormone therapy, antidepressants, or in extreme cases with PMDD, sometimes hysterectomy, or potentially chemical menopause. So often they'll be put into chemical menopause for a period of time, maybe a year, and then if it's found to be helpful, they might ultimately go on to have a hysterectomy. And the medical view seems to be that it's just you're super sensitive to hormone changes, which I agree with, almost allergic to your own hormones, and you're having this extreme reaction every time your hormones change or fluctuate in any way, but you're kind of stuck with it, and these are the only things available, and that's it, end of story. But then I started working with women with PMDD in my clinic, and they were getting better. And, I actually believe that it's a sign of, yes, I agree that we are super sensitive to hormone changes, so we're more susceptible to these things, but there's so much we can do to actually address it, managing stress, working on balancing our hormones as well as we can, making sure that we're not estrogen dominant or being exposed to too many hormone disrupting chemicals, all of those things, digestion can make a huge difference. And, I've seen that in my clients. And then I got better, and I was no problem at all with my hormones for quite a few years. But then I kind of got older, hit my 40s, and then the roller coaster started again. So perimenopause kicked in, and then everything I'd been doing before wasn't working anymore. Because my hormones were doing something different. And they were constantly fluctuating, because that's what happens in perimenopause. So I just could not get on an even keel. I was, again, I angry, really depressed, crying, felt like I was kind of losing the plot slightly, and had to kind of change my approach accordingly, and, work on it, figure out what was going on and work on it slightly differently. And again, I'm thankfully sane again now, and balanced, and it does help me relate to clients on the program, because so many of our clients on the Nourish Method are kind of going through a similar stage. And weight, definitely, even with all the knowledge I have, my weight, I'm not naturally a skinny person, and I've definitely found it much more challenging to keep my weight down and stay slim and healthy since I've been in that perimenopausal transition. But it is possible. It's just, you have to work a little bit harder at it, and you have to tackle it from it's a multi-pronged approach, isn't it? There's not one magic thing that you can do that's going to miraculously help. It's tackling it from all angles and getting everything right at the same time. That's what gets results.
Definitely. There's so many questions that I want to ask you based on everything that you've just said. Just going back to the PMDD thing, I think that is going to blow so many people's minds who are listening. The fact that you can get rid of those PMS symptoms, or at least, drastically improve PMS symptoms, PMDD symptoms, because so many women just think it's normal. They just think that
Exactly.
for 1 or 2 weeks of your month, every month, you just have this horrendous time where you bleed heavily and you feel awful and you have horrible cravings and you feel depressed and angry and all of this. But the reality is that it's not normal. And well, it unfortunately is normal, but it doesn't mean that it's the way that things should be.
No, it's a sign of imbalance, isn't it? It's a sign that something's not quite right. Exactly. And actually, in extreme, like with me, it was 2 weeks of the month. So it's half your life, that's being affected by these symptoms, which is, massively significant. So
yeah.
it's,
I feel like we see a lot of women who only get 1 good week a month, but particularly if they have a shorter cycle as well. And, how depressing is that, to only get 1 good week a month and the rest of the time you're battling these symptoms. And like you say, the only solutions that you're giving at the doctors are things that are either just suppressing your hormones or suppressing the symptoms and never really getting to the root cause of it. I know you spoke a little bit about how we need to balance our hormones. And I always think that when we talk about balancing hormones, we feel like we're being really clear, but actually to the listeners, I think that perhaps hormone balance might just to them mean getting the estrogen right. But what does it really mean to work with a client to balance their hormones? What does that actually involve?
Oh gosh, that's such a
big question, I know.
There are lots of things that impact on hormones. So, estrogen dominance, I kind of just briefly mentioned, is a really common one. And that's really common both with PMS or PMDD sufferers, and also during perimenopause, particularly in the sort of early and later stages, where estrogen is often too high in relation to our progesterone, because our progesterone can often drop faster than our estrogen, and that can cause a lot of symptoms. So part of it is reducing what's coming in and maximizing what's going out. So reducing exposure to external estrogens and maximizing elimination of excess estrogens. So you're kind of modulating your estrogen levels. So that's just one example. But also, testosterone that starts to drop as we get older. that can have a huge impact on our ability to lose weight, and muscle mass, all of those things. So again, there's lots of things we can do to support that, and progesterone as well. But also it's not just sex hormones, is it? It's also
Exactly.
thyroid hormones, stress hormones.
And then also there's the blood sugar hormones,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
insulin and glucagon. So yeah, there's lots of hormones that we're talking about when we're talking about hormone balance. But I think a lot of people think we're just talking about getting estrogen right. And when it comes to balancing hormones, I always talk about how there's lots of different things that we need to be thinking about, like gut health and liver health and nutrient levels and intolerances and inflammation. And I think you made a really good point, which is it's about getting all of those things right at the same time. And I think when people are trying to figure it out on their own, apart from the fact that there's just so much to figure out, it's so difficult to do on your own. I also think that what people don't realize is that they're not addressing all of those things at the same time. They might take a supplement that, boosts their gut bacteria or something like that. And that alone, it's not really going to get them anywhere, is it?
Exactly, because clients will quite often say, "Oh, well, I've tried that before." It's like, yes, but
Yeah.
you just tried that, and actually, that's not enough. And it's also, it's not just diet, is it? It's also getting exercise right, and also it's not what's right for one isn't right for another. So there's also that personalized aspect that we bring to the table that you're not going to get from Googling or watching or looking at things on social media. There's it's so important to tailor it to the individual and what's actually needed for them personally, because their hormones are doing something completely different to the next client's hormones. So what we need to do is going to be completely different as well. So
Yeah.
there's that personalized aspect as well.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier actually about how the work that we do is a big chunk of it is getting the foundations in place. And that does look the same for a lot of people, making sure they're drinking enough water, sleeping, managing stress, eating enough protein, and all that sort of thing. But then to really get them optimizing their hormones and their overall health and getting that weight off, particularly after 40, when it becomes that much more challenging, we really got to get down into the nitty gritty and look at the individual and say, okay, you're lacking this gut bacteria, so let's eat this food and look at this supplement, and let's look at this lifestyle aspect, and okay, you're deficient in this nutrient and this nutrient and this nutrient. Oh, but you're also taking this medication, so we need to take this approach, as opposed to something else that we might do for someone who wasn't taking that medication or was a vegetarian or whatever.
Exactly. Or
So
they might have a thyroid problem, but the next client doesn't, or
yeah.
that makes things very different. So yeah, it's this, but as you say, the foundations are also super important.
Mm-hmm.
That is a little bit more generic, but that sort of that personalized, tweaking it for each client is kind of what really gets the results and makes the difference, I think.
Yeah, definitely. The women that we work with, as we said, they are mostly women who are finding that as they get into their 40s, maybe their late 30s, weight loss becomes so much more challenging. And, we've spoken about how there's lots of factors like your hormones changing. And I often talk about how, metabolism declines around this time as well. But I'd love to get your insights into what you think is happening. What is it that makes weight loss in your 40s so much more difficult than, beforehand when you're in your 20s and 30s?
So again, I think it's a number of things. That lots of things start to change as we get older. So we've had more of a more life, so more of an opportunity for life to have an impact on our bodies and how they work. So particularly our gut health, for example, certain things decline our digestion does decline as we get older. So things like your digestive enzymes and your stomach acid tends to naturally decline with age. So if we don't work on maintaining it, that's going to have an impact on our digestion and absorption of nutrients. And then that's going to have an impact on every system in the body. So that's one factor. Your microbiome has had a lot more opportunity to be affected by life. So toxins, stress, antibiotics, other types of medication, so maybe eating the wrong foods, alcohol, all of those sorts of things. So there's a lot of our clients have imbalances there. Hormones are obviously changing, as in sex hormones. Thyroid dysfunction becomes much more common as we get over 40. The amount of women on the program that we come across with sluggish thyroids who are completely oblivious to it until we test and through it.
And they've often been tested already, haven't they, by their doctors and told that it's all normal. But when we look at the reference ranges in terms of what's optimal, and we also look at the other thyroid markers that aren't included on your NHS test, so often we see that thyroids are sluggish and not functioning properly.
Yeah, exactly. I always say that GPs do a great job of keeping people alive and ruling out chronic and acute illness, but we're here to help people thrive. And that's the difference. That's because the functional medicine approach that we use is about, as you say, optimizing health rather than just kind of scraping through the bare minimum to survive. It's actually we want you to thrive and feel amazing, not just be surviving. So that's the difference. So our interpretation of those results is quite different as well.
Yeah, definitely. Not just for the thyroid, for lots of different things. We often have people come through that bring us their test results from their doctor, and we sometimes send them back and say, you need to have a discussion with your doctor about that, because maybe the receptionist has just told them that it's all normal, and actually it's not, and it needs some attention. Like you say, we look at things we go through it with a fine-toothed comb, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And then a few other things. So, blood sugar and insulin resistance is another thing that we become more susceptible to with age and as our hormones change. And something else that I've been kind of researching a bit more lately is the impact of dropping estrogen on the gallbladder and the liver function. And I think that has a huge impact with some of our clients as well, in terms of, when weight loss resistance is really tricky. So on the program, we tend to find that the majority of clients do really, really well, and the weight comes off. I wouldn't say it happens overnight, because, these things take time to sort out. But by the end of the program, I would say probably 97% do really, really well. But there's this 3% that it's even more challenging for. And I think that there's a connection there with genetics and also gallbladder and detoxification and liver function as well, which is something else that tends to struggle a bit more it's more common that we have problems with that as we get older and as our hormones are changing and estrogen's declining. So I think that's also something that we need to look at, that I've been sort of incorporating quite a lot as well recently.
That's really interesting, because I was going to ask you, what do you think the difference is between someone who comes through the program and really thrives and hits their goals, and someone who is just kind of treading water and doesn't really seem to get anywhere? Do you think it's all around that kind of side of things, gallbladder and detoxification, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think probably some of those clients maybe haven't stuck to the program, maybe haven't quite done what we've told them to do, because you do sometimes get that it's not working, and then you kind of dig a bit deeper and, well, have you done what I recommended with that, or have you introduced that? Well, no, I haven't. So and it is so important that they do embrace and kind of do follow the recommendations, because as we've said, there's so many aspects, and it's really important to get all of those things right for the magic to happen. So if they're not doing, they might think it's not an important part of the program, but actually it could be absolutely vital in combination with everything else. So sometimes it's a compliance issue, maybe. Sometimes things happen and it's, unavoidable. They might have, no judgment, but, they might have tragedy in the family, or something unexpected happens, and, life life gets in the way. So, that can happen sometimes too. I think in a really tiny percentage, and this is where I'm sort of doing a lot of extra research at the moment, it's because it frustrates me when we don't get results as quickly as we would like with clients. It really bugs me. So I've been doing quite a lot of work around that. And I do think that this liver detoxification, gallbladder, and for a small, I think genetics play a part as well. So, there are things, even if at the end of the program they've still not got the results they would like, there is an opportunity to dig a bit deeper, which is sometimes needed with some clients. Sometimes clients just need that little bit longer. We just need to just keep digging until we get the answers, which is what we tend to do.
I think what we do is over the course of 6 months, and while that sounds like a long time, when you think about it, for a lot of women, the imbalances and the problems that they have that are keeping them stuck and causing this weight loss resistance has developed over 20, 30 years, if not their entire lives. So undoing some of these problems and restoring balance can take time, and sometimes it takes a couple of weeks, and sometimes it could take a year.
Years. Not very often, but it can do. It can. I know with myself, if I want to lose weight, it takes my measurements will go down, but it will take months for the scales to move. And that's another thing. People get too hung up on weight. I think weight's such an inaccurate measurement of what's actually going on in the body, because if you're losing fat and building muscle, your weight might stay the same, but your waist and your measurements can be changing significantly. We had a lady on the program a while ago now, maybe a couple of years ago, and she was all the way through, her inches were going down to the point where her clothes were literally falling off her. She had to go and buy a whole new wardrobe, and she still hadn't lost weight. So it just goes to show how extreme that can be. And then she got to the end of the program and it all kind of fell off in one go, which is what happens. But, it just goes to show. And I know I was talking to someone the other day, actually, because I sometimes psychologically struggle with that, because I think I weigh quite a lot for my size, and I am quite muscly and I do a lot of resistance, and I'm quite curvy, naturally. I'm never going to be a stick insect. I'm just not. And I was talking to somebody though, and they were the same height as me, same build, same weight, and their waist was 10 inches bigger. So it just goes to show that the difference and weight, how inaccurate a measurement weight can be. So actually it's about how your clothes feel and how you're measuring and all that sort of stuff as well. And don't get so hung up on the scales.
Yeah, it's kind of like the weight is an easy thing to set as a goal, because it feels quite tangible and people know kind of what they look like when they used to weigh 10 stone or whatever it was. But your body composition definitely changes over time, and so often it's just not realistic to get back to what you were in your 20s, partly because it's normal to carry a little bit more weight as you get older, but also just because of the way that body composition changes. And we don't necessarily want to be light. We want to make sure that we've got lots of muscle, and we've got a good hip to weight ratio. But it's not all about being light and making the scales move downwards. And I think if more people could kind of embrace that and just throw away their scales, they'd probably be so much happier and probably make so much more progress. Because we see it in our clients all the time, don't we? They get so stressed out and hung up on the fact that they've only lost half a pound when they've been working really, really hard. But actually, like you say, the clothes are getting looser, the belt notches are getting smaller, and it's just, we're focusing on totally the wrong thing when we're talking about weight.
When they're saying I've not lost any weight, and you dig a bit deeper and say, well, have you measured? They'll go, oh yes, I've lost 3 inches from my waist. It's like, well, there you go then.
And that's what we want, isn't it? Like most women, when we're looking in the mirror and we're trying on clothes, that's what we want, is for the inches to go down, particularly around the waist.
We want to feel confident, don't we? And we want to feel good about ourselves. And that's another thing that I'm really passionate about. I don't believe that just because you're over 40, you have to feel exhausted, lose all your confidence, not feel sexy, not feel the best you can be. I just really believe that if you do all the right things and look after your health in the right way, that you can absolutely thrive. My dad, not a woman, but he's 78 and he's still full of energy, and not taking any medication. So, it just goes to show. And he does, he's pretty healthy, looks after himself, keeps moving and eats healthily, and makes such a difference.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that with the right approach and looking after yourself in the right way, you can thrive for many, many more decades. It's not all over as soon as you hit the perimenopause, that's for sure.
Well, I like to think that the 40s are the new 30s, because
Absolutely.
I'm heading into the 50s in the not too distant future.
Well, we keep having these sayings, don't we? Of it always used to be 30s the new 20. And I think part of the reason for this is because we are learning how to stay healthier for longer. And if we keep ourselves well nourished, if we look after our muscle mass and don't lose too much of that, and we keep ourselves flexible and mobile, there's no reason why we can't thrive right into our 90s and beyond.
No, but we want, and that's what we want, isn't it? There's no point having longevity if you haven't got a good quality of life, and
Yeah.
you want that. We want to live to be a great age, and have a lovely, long, happy life. But we want to have a healthy one as well, so that we can enjoy it and do all the things that we want to do, and not back by disease, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm passionate about that. Because so many clients will kind of say, I just feel so tired all the time. I guess it's just my age. And it's like, no, it's not. Let's find out why. Why are you so tired all the time? It's because, your iron's low, or your thyroid's not working properly, or you're deficient in this. There's always a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to jump back to something you said earlier when you were talking about genetics, because some people might hear that and think, oh, genetics, oh, well, I'm destined to be overweight. So if genetics are a factor and they are contributing to someone's stubborn weight, does that mean that, that's it for them? Or is there something that they can do?
No, we kind of use an approach called genomics, which is all about it's so you have your genetics, but then there's your epigenetics. So you have your genetics and you can't change your DNA, and you might be more prone to gaining weight. I'm one of those people. I'm more prone to hormone imbalances. I'm one of those people. More prone to stress impacting on you negatively. I'm one of those people too. I've tested.
You've got the trifecta.
Oh yeah, I've got it all going on. But there's, if you put the right strategies in place, there's the environment you bathe the genes in, and so just because you have a gene doesn't mean that that is your destiny. You can actually change your destiny by with the right diet and lifestyle approaches, and actually almost bypass that, and it might be a bit more challenging for you, but it isn't the end of the story at all. So it's just a case of finding out what the magic combination is, and supporting it in the right way.
Yeah. Genetics hold the gun, environment pulls the trigger. That's what I always try and remember. Because what we eat and what we do and how we live our lives can determine, what genes are switched on and off. And certainly, just because there is a family history of something doesn't mean that, that's definitely the way things are going to go for you. It might mean that you need a slightly different approach to someone who doesn't have those genes, but it's still very much, possible to prevent that problem, or, manage weight, even if you are genetically predisposed.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of what initially sparked my interest in nutrition, because my mum died of cancer very young at 29.
Gosh.
And so it was stomach cancer as well. So I was always, when I was younger, I kind of thought it was like, here's the bomb, wait for it to go off. It was kind of like, I just thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be my destiny as well. And that's kind of what's initially, I worked in organic food and farming many years ago, and that kind of got me really interested in reducing your toxic load and maximizing the nutritional value and the quality of food, and that's kind of what then led on to me studying in nutrition along with the hormone stuff. So yeah, and I'm nearly 48, so It's not happened to me. And I do believe that, by taking control of your nutrition and your lifestyle, you can you can bypass that and live a long and healthy life.
100%, absolutely. I want to ask you one more question, and part of the reason why I want to ask you this is because we get asked about supplements all the time, and we sometimes have clients come through who are taking a long list of supplements, and I think we had a new record recently. I can't remember what it was, but it was in the 20s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How much? Sorry,
it's 26 different ones. I believe it.
Yeah, 26 different supplements, and I think often, almost always, what we do is we try to whittle that down and get them taking fewer and usually better quality supplements. So why does that matter? Surely the more nutrients, the more supplements, the better, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. Or first of all, your liver can't cope with all of those things. So, how we're talking about how liver detoxification as we get older becomes more challenging, and it's super important for weight loss, amongst many other things. Well, making your liver work really, really hard, digesting all of these supplements it's not gonna help. It's not gonna be the answer. And also, you shouldn't be taking supplements that you don't need, because a lot of clients who've sort of self-prescribed supplements are taking things they don't need. The amount of clients we see who are taking iron and they don't need iron, and actually too much iron is toxic. It can actually make us really unwell. It's dangerous. So you should never take iron unless you've had your iron levels tested and you need it. So there's, same with vitamin D. Vitamin D can cause kidney damage and toxicity if it's taken excessively. So again, I would never want to supplement more than a very low dose of vitamin D without testing the client's levels. And you can't guess, because some people are better at synthesizing vitamin D through the skin from the sunlight than others. I'm like a vampire. I can spend all my time indoors and still have really good levels, but but other people can spend all the time outdoors and still have very low levels. So you can't just assume because you do or don't spend time outside that you do or don't need it. The only way to know what your levels are and what you need is by testing. So it's so tailored to the client and their needs, and it's much better to take a few well selected supplements for that client that's absolutely needed, for a short period of time as well. Most of them are just short term to get you back where you should be, and then the long-term goal is to maintain most of it through food. Food always comes first, but sometimes it's not quite enough when things have become really out of balance, and we need that extra help just to get you back on track. So, but yeah, taking loads of kind of random supplements. There's also, you need to be careful with drug nutrient interactions as well. A lot of our clients are on medications, and people don't realize that actually supplements are kind of like a medication. Some of them are quite powerful, and they do interact with certain medications, and it can be dangerous to take certain combinations. So that's something else that we always check. We'll never give you something that's going to cause a problem with whatever medication you might be taking. So there's lots of reasons why it's not a great idea to just kind of self-prescribe numerous supplements. Much better to take a tailored and measured approach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy, really, the stuff that you can get, off the counter or online, given the very serious interactions that there can be with medications, or the very serious side effects of overdosing on certain supplements can have. So yeah, caution always advised. And if you can't talk to a nutritionist, then even a pharmacist can have a look and see whether there's interactions between your medications and the supplements you want to take. So you can always have a chat with your pharmacist as well, can't you?
That's a good point. The other thing is, you kind of touched on it, is the quality. A lot of you get people kind of going, well, I didn't get the one you recommended. I bought it from Holland and Barrett because it was so much cheaper. Yes, it's cheap for a reason. It's cheap because it's generally not great quality. Companies like that sell it cheap because they buy in bulk the ingredients that tends to be rejected by the professional companies, and that's how they can afford to pass that discount on to the clients. And often the dosages are, it needs to be also the correct dosage, and they often aren't. So, quality and correct dose is also really important, and not lots of fillers and bulkers and rubbish added to them, which is another thing that you get with the kind of less expensive supplements. So yes, they tend to be more expensive, the ones that we recommend, although we do try and work within clients' budgets as much as we can. But they're good quality, and they're clean, and they work, and they're the correct dosage.
Yeah, and I always think you save money taking that approach, because you're going to get the impact of that supplement quicker than if you take some poor quality, low dose supplement, and you're taking it for years. It's probably not going to have the impact that a high quality, appropriately dosed supplement is going to have over the course of a few months.
Absolutely. It's a false economy, isn't it? Because then they just go back for more of other stuff. Yeah. Isn't going to work either. And, over time, you end up spending more money.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been so interesting hearing about what you do with our clients and your pearls of wisdom. And I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future, because you've recently done some training in sort of nutrition for cancer care, haven't you? And I'd love to pick your brain about that. And I'm sure our listeners will be really interested to hear about that as well.
Thanks very much for having me as well. It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to talk to me about anything that I've discussed in this episode, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok by searching at Louise Digby Nutrition. In fact, I'm brand new to TikTok, so why not head over there and give me a follow and help me get started on there. If you're enjoying this podcast, please head to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.